All right, good afternoon, or actually good evening, grade nines. I hope that you guys are all having a productive week so far and that Tuesday has been treating you guys well. Grade nines, we are back again, guys. We are now here for week 20 worth of tutoring, which means that we've had quite our fair share of sessions so far this year, which, believe it or not, is actually a great thing for a lot of you because it means that we are slowly building up our library of recordings of the different lessons that we've had during the year, which is going to be super helpful for you guys as we progress through the year. So, grade nines, we want to continue from where we left off about 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, where we left off last week, excuse me. We started talking about the topic of data handling, and we mentioned that data handling is one of those topics that is actually subdivided into four specific subtopics, right? We've mentioned how the world of data handling is broken up into data collection, data organization, data representation, and then data analysis and interpretation. Okay. So there are a few independent sections that we need to know about, and one of the most important sections that we need to know about within those subtopics is the world of analyzing data, right? This is where we get a lot of our marks from when we look at a bunch of information and we are being asked to calculate median, mean, mode, range, Q1, Q3, interquartile range. All of these values are quite specific, and they can actually give us a lot of marks depending on the sort of style that the question is presented in. But what we want to focus on in today's lesson is those individual calculations. I know that many of you will be having your maths paper 2 exams coming up sometime soon, and this is some of the work that you need to know in order to be able to answer those questions effectively. Okay. So let's quickly get going with today's work, guys. I'm going to start by sharing my screen with you. So you should be able to see my screen show up quite soon, but as soon as it pops up, you should see me coloring or scribbling in white pen, yellow pen, orange pen, and finally green and blue pen. Okay, if for whatever reason you guys cannot see that at any point during the lesson, you need to please let me know. So what are we talking about today? Analyzing statistical data. So you can write this down as your heading: analyzing statistical data. The date today is the 3rd of June 2025, in case you guys were wondering. So, like I said, guys, when it comes to this topic of data handling, we do get a lot of marks from being able to calculate the appropriate values, right? The specific measures of what we call central tendency and spread. Okay. So, what are the four essentially measurements that we need to be able to complete? We can call these the four measures. Okay, there's four measurements that we need to be able to make. Number one is what we call the mean. This is the average of a data set. And yes, you guys need to know the definitions, but also the names of these different measures. So the average of a data set. Right, this is quite easy work, guys, so I'm only going to go through it in today's lesson. Number two, we need to know what the median is, right? The median is the middlemost value. The middlemost value in a data set. You will possibly see that this is sometimes referred to as what we call Q2. Q2. Okay, because eventually you'll see we talk about Q1, Q2, and Q3, which represents the quarter mark quartiles, or just quartiles, I suppose, of a data set. But this is something you will learn about a little bit later on, but it is something that you will begin discussing, or at least maybe seeing in textbooks. And finally, the last or the second to last measure that we need to be aware of is what we call the mode. This is the most frequent value in a data set. Okay, now it's important to remember that when we're discussing the mode, it is very possible that we have multiple modes, right? We call it a multimodal data set. Right, so if we have, for example, the number 23, 23, 40, 41, and 42, looking at these numbers over here, guys, which number repeats itself the most or appears most frequently in our data set? Well, looking at the information that we have, it's quite clear that the number 23 would be our mode. So if we were asked about the mode for this data set, we would simply say that it's the number 23. If, however, we have the following information, we add on a number at the end over here. Now we have two numbers that repeat themselves an equal number of times. So you can see on the left here that we have two number 23s, but we also have two 42s. In this case, we would say that we have what is called a bimodal data set. Right, so we have two modes. The two modes are the number 23 and the number 42. But if we added a third digit or number over here, let's say we had 3 of these 23s, right? Just as an example, guys, we have 3 23s and only 2 42s. It's clear that the number 23 is the most frequent value in the data set. So then only the number 23 is considered to be the mode. Okay. But it's possible to get bimodal, trimodal, and multimodal or polymodal. Okay. So just remember, we can have more than one mode in a data set. And finally, the last sort of value that we want to make sure we are familiar with and capable of calculating is the range, right? Which in the context of a data set is the maximum value minus the minimum value. The maximum value minus the minimum value. And what does the range tell us? Well, if our numbers stretch between 23 and 42, it tells us how much distance there is between the maximum and minimum number for other values to be found. Sometimes we have a very wide data set, and sometimes it's considered a very narrow data set, right? In the sense that it's got a small range. We don't have a lot of values across which data points can be derived. So These are the four things that we need to know, and we're going to go straight into some examples. I'm going to do just 3 examples with you guys because this is information that you guys must make sure you are comfortable with applying in your own questions. But how do we calculate the median, the mean, the median, and the mode and the range? Well, for the mean, right, we can write a small note over here. We calculate the average by taking the total of all data points. We take the total of all the data points and we divide by the number of data points that were included in the above calculation. Right? That's going to give us our average. So if we wanted to look at the median, how would we calculate the median? I'm going to show you guys the manual way to find it, but then also give you a little formula that you can use. Okay, we would say we are going to take the number of terms in the data set plus 1 multiplied by a half. Multiplied by a half. The mode is something that we don't calculate but rather identify, and we know that the range is the maximum value minus the minimum value. Okay. Right, so let's go through an example, guys. You are given a data set that tells you the following information. Example number 1. Let's see. 7 shops, or let's say, 7 shops revealed their price for a, let's say, can of Fanta. And if you want me to be specific, we'll say a 440 milliliter can. 7 shops, guys. What are the prices of the different cans of Fanta? One shop sells it for 16 Rand, another for 17 Rand. A third shop sells it for 18.5 Rand. A really expensive shop sells it for 22 Rand. There's a local shop sort of nearby to where I stay that sells it for 14.5 Rand. Another shop also sells it for 17 Rand. And finally, there's one last shop that sells it for 18 Rand. So over here, we have 7 independent prices. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 prices. We need to calculate the 4 measures for this data set. Now, my recommendation to you grade 9s is to always put your data into ascending order. What is ascending order? From smallest to biggest. So what is the cheapest can of Coke? It is the 14 Rand 50 can that we see over here. Now you can either cross out through the original list, or you can just tick it nearby to show that you've included it, which I think is better. 14.5. After that, we are going to have the value 16. Then we have 2 17s. We have an 18, an 18.5, and finally a 22 Rand can. So we can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 7 values. So you can always double check that you have the correct number of data points rewritten in your reordered information. So let's go ahead and start with the first calculation. We want the mean, which is the average. The average is sometimes shown as X bar, right? It's X, the letter algebraic X with a line on top of it. X bar is sometimes used to denote the mean, the average for something. So how do we calculate the average, guys? We're going to add up all of these numbers that we have, okay? And then divide by the total number of numbers. So 14.5, 16, 17, 17, 18, 18.5, and 22. It doesn't have to be in order in this calculation. You just have to make sure you have all of the numbers. And we know that there are a total of 7 prices. So we're going to take this number and divide by 7. And at this point, guys, we can put all of our information into our calculator and find the answer. Now, certain questions will ask you to round to the nearest whole number, maybe round to the nearest tenth, right? Round to 2 decimal places. Whatever the case is, you need to make sure that you abide by the instructions given in the question. But for the sake of this example, we will round to 2 decimal places. And the average comes out to being 17,57. But what is this supposed to represent again, guys? It is the average. The average what? It is the average price of a can of Fanta. So you must put a rand sign in front of your answer. So the average can of Coke, the average can of Fanta in these 7 stores would be 17 Rand 57. Now, B, we want to calculate the median. There are 2 ways of doing this, and I'm going to show you both. The first way requires that you have an ascending data set, right? Like the one we've reordered. Because the median is the middlemost number, we are going to start on the left and make a cross. Go to the far right, make a cross. Go back to the left, back to the right. Back to the left, back to the right. And you can see that we are left with one value in the middle, where there are 1, 2, 3 numbers on the left and 1, 2, 3 numbers on the right. So we know that this value over here, 17, must be the middlemost value, which we also call the median. Okay, so we could do that, and you would probably want to leave your working out, guys. Okay, or at least show how you got to your answer. So maybe you could leave this kind of working out on the side. Right, but either way, we can conclude that the median is the value 17. Now, I did say to you that we can also use this formula from above. The median is equal to n plus 1 times by a half. N is the number of data points we have. So we have 7 data points plus 1 times a half. A half times 8 gives us an answer of 4. But we don't even have the number 4 in this data set, grade 9s. So what is this 4 trying to tell me? Well, the 4, believe it or not, is actually trying to tell me that we are looking at the fourth number or the fourth data point. So let's count. We would say 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can see that we land up with the same answer that we got using the manual method, right? So in this case, the fourth number is the value 17. And so no matter which way we do it, we land up with identical answers. But you do have to be mindful of the fact that your answer using this formula is going to give you a position, not a value, right? So it's telling you to look at the fourth data point. The answer is not the number 4. Okay, so using the formula is important, but remember it does take a little bit of extra understanding, but you guys are more than welcome to figure out which method you prefer. Let's move on to point C. These are the easy questions now. What is the mode of our data set? In other words, which number repeats itself most frequently? We can see in this case, it's the number 17 that pops up twice. So it is a unimodal data set, meaning that there's only one mode. So we can simply state that the mode is the value 17, which in this case happens to be the same as the median, but it's not always going to be the case. And finally, if we are trying to calculate the range of a data set, we want to take the maximum value minus the minimum value. And guys, this is exactly why ordering your data in ascending order right in the beginning helps so much. So looking at our data set again that we see over here, the biggest or most expensive can cost us 22 Rand and the cheapest can was 14 Rand 50 cents. So even though I only looked at 7 stores, I can see that there is a difference of 7 Rand and 50 cents between just 7 stores, right? That's a big difference. To know I can get something for 14 Rand in one place, but 22 Rand in another place is quite crazy. Okay, you are more than welcome to underline your answers to show that they are your final answers for each question. But I hope that this makes sense, guys. If you have any questions about how I'm getting specific answers, please make sure that you ask me. I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to copy very quickly. I know I moved ahead quite quickly on that section of work. Okay, you guys have got 2 minutes to quickly copy, and then I'm going to move on to a second example.